U.S. warns Turkey against buying Russian gas amid rising geopolitical tensions. In a new development highlighting growing tensions between Washington and Ankara, the United States has reportedly urged Turkey to avoid expanding its energy cooperation with Russia, particularly in the purchase of natural gas. According to diplomatic sources, Washington has conveyed its concerns to Turkish officials, emphasizing that energy deals with Moscow could undermine Western sanctions and weaken the global efforts to isolate Russia following its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The U.S. administration believes that any form of major trade with Russia, especially in the energy sector, indirectly contributes to the Kremlin's financial stability and military capabilities. The United States has maintained a strong stance against countries engaging in significant energy transactions with Russia. After the start of the Ukraine conflict, Washington and its European allies imposed multiple rounds of sanctions designed to restrict Russia's access to global markets and reduce its revenue from oil and gas exports. Officials in Washington argue that by continuing to purchase large volumes of Russian gas, countries like Turkey help Moscow generate the foreign currency needed to sustain its war efforts and bypass economic pressure from the West. The U.S. insists that these actions contradict the spirit of NATO unity, given that Turkey is a long-standing member of the alliance. Energy analysts say the American warning to Turkey reflects Washington's broader strategy to curb Moscow's influence in regional energy markets. Russia has long used its vast oil and gas reserves as instruments of political power, often leveraging energy dependence to gain strategic advantages. By discouraging Turkey from deepening energy ties with Russia, the U.S. aims to reduce Moscow's leverage in both Europe and the Middle East. At the same time, Washington is promoting alternative energy sources, including natural gas supplies from the United States, Qatar, and Azerbaijan, as well as renewable energy development in the region. Turkey's energy relationship with Russia is extensive and complex. The country imports nearly half of its natural gas from Russia through major pipelines such as Turk Stream and Blue Stream. These pipelines play a critical role in meeting Turkey's domestic energy demand and in supplying gas to parts of southern Europe. Turkish officials have consistently stated that energy cooperation with Russia is based on economic necessity, not political alignment. Ankara argues that it must secure reliable and affordable energy sources to sustain its rapidly growing economy. However, Washington views this dependence as a potential vulnerability that Moscow could exploit for political or strategic gain. For the United States, discouraging Turkey from buying Russian gas serves multiple objectives. Economically, it opens the possibility for American liquefied natural gas (LNG) exports to gain a stronger foothold in global markets, including Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. Over the past decade, the U.S. has become one of the world's leading LNG exporters, and limiting Russian competition could strengthen American energy influence worldwide. Politically, it allows the U.S. to reinforce its leadership within NATO and demonstrate its ability to shape allied policies on global security and trade. Strategically, it reduces Russia's economic resilience by cutting off a vital source of income that funds its ongoing military operations in Ukraine and other regions. The U.S. government has also raised security concerns about Russia's involvement in large-scale infrastructure projects in NATO territory. Officials in Washington worry that energy projects such as Turk Stream could be used by Moscow not only for economic purposes but also for intelligence gathering and regional destabilization. American officials have repeatedly warned that Russia's control over critical infrastructure could give it undue influence over European and Turkish decision-making processes. These concerns have led to strong opposition from the U.S. against Russian-backed projects, with calls for greater energy diversification across NATO countries. Despite American warnings, Turkey continues to maintain a delicate balancing act between its Western allies and its Eastern partners. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has pursued a foreign policy that emphasizes independence and regional leadership, often resisting external pressure from both Washington and Brussels. Ankara's approach toward Russia reflects this strategy of strategic autonomy, allowing Turkey to engage with Moscow in trade, energy, and defense while remaining a key NATO member. Turkish officials argue that their country's unique geographic position makes it a bridge between East and West, and that cutting ties with Russia entirely would not serve its national interests. However, the United States remains firm in its message that continued economic cooperation with Russia could carry consequences. While Washington has not imposed direct sanctions on Turkey over its gas imports, U.S. officials have hinted that further involvement in Russian energy projects could expose Turkish entities to potential penalties under existing sanctions frameworks. Such warnings are part of a wider effort by the U.S. to discourage allies from assisting Moscow's economy, directly or indirectly. Similar pressure has been applied to other nations, including India and China, although Turkey's NATO membership makes the situation more politically sensitive. Energy experts note that the dispute over Russian gas is part of a larger geopolitical contest between the United States and Russia for influence in Eurasia. The U.S. sees energy as a tool of power and security, not just commerce. By limiting Russia's ability to use energy exports as a political weapon, Washington hopes to maintain the global balance of power in favor of Western democracies. Turkey's cooperation is seen as crucial in achieving this goal, given its strategic location, control over energy transit routes, and its growing role as an energy hub connecting Europe with Asia. In summary, the American warning to Turkey over Russian gas purchases is a reflection of broader global power politics rather than a simple trade dispute. The United States seeks to isolate Russia economically, promote its own energy exports, and maintain unity among NATO members amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. For Washington, ensuring that Turkey reduces its dependence on Russian energy is essential to weakening Moscow's economic and political influence. For Ankara, however, maintaining a balanced relationship with both East and West remains a matter of national strategy. As global energy markets continue to shift, the tension between economic needs and geopolitical loyalties is likely to remain at the center of Turkey-US-Russia relations for years.